Welcome back to Now Media's TV show, Pain Diaries, broadcasting here in Houston, Texas. I'm Dr. Suzanne Manzi, your host here on Pain Diaries, and we are back taking a deeper dive into longevity medicine. So who wants to feel their best? Who wants to live their life to the fullest? And who wants to stay young and healthy? Well, I know I do, and I have a special treat for you on today's show. Jim LaValle will be joining us today. He is on a whole different level when it comes to educating about living the best life from the inside out. He is literally the ultimate human biochemist, and he's figured out the recipes and hacks to longevity and anti-aging. Thanks for being with us today.
It is great to be here. And, you know, when I turned 60, I got incredibly interested in longevity, let me tell you.
Well, it looks like you're aging in reverse, sir.
Well, 63, so we'll see.
So I know you started your career as a registered pharmacist, and then you studied homeopathy extensively, ultimately taking on your doctor of naturopathy. So being internationally known for your expertise with your books and your knowledge, we are so excited to have you here today. So thank you again for joining us.
Oh, I'm excited to do this. It's going to be fun, I'm sure.
So I wanted to start with kind of with you and where it all started. I love some of the stories you've written in your book. So maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about your publications and what were your goals in writing these, and just where you started as a human, as a person, and what's driven you to your passion in this field.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started exercising a lot at an early age. So that I think got me interested in vitamins and nutrition. I've written 24 books now, I think. 25 and 26 are getting published this year, and a reprint on number 27. I think about 25 ebooks and 4 databases. So I just had this endless passion for getting information out to people that help improve their lives. I figured out when I was first behind the counter, I thought, we need to help people do more than just take medication. How can we help them, move better? Is there a way that we can get them to feel better? And for example, with drug-induced nutrient depletions, a lot of times people are taking a medication that's depleting a nutrient that's making them feel tired or making them feel depressed. And they just have to get that nutrient back in their body, and then they don't have to feel that way anymore. So there's a lot of different avenues that happen, but basically, it's been 40 years of doing, what I'd call either integrative, personalized, natural therapies. And, I took the direction of, I taught at pharmacy and medical school at the University of Cincinnati as an appointed faculty for almost 20 years. On faculty at GW in their department of integrative medicine, and, taught at a lot of different universities, and then did a lot of work with major industry leaders. So working with McKesson and CVS and Rite Aid, and a whole bunch of different types of ways to get the information out. And then of course culminating in being the academic co-chair at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and the chair of the International Peptide Society. And so I get to educate thousands of doctors a year and other healthcare providers. So it's just been one fantastic journey for me.
No, absolutely. And I'm one of your fans, and I know a lot of other docs are too. I feel like, as you know, there's this disconnect, right, between the fields of medicine. So you have this natural way of thinking about how we can make people live better and the functional medicine side. But then you switch gears, and then you have the regular general doctors that say, no, 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 that's completely wrong. Where did this disconnect come from? And why is this happening?
It's interesting because the pharmacy school I went to was founded by John Uri Lloyd Specifics Medicines, which eventually became SmithKline. And so in the late 1800s and early 1900s, botanical medicines were used a bunch. And then patent medicine came in, and we kind of switched gears to this, hey, I've got the magic pill. And look, I have family members that have personally had their lives saved by the interventions of modern medicine. I am by no means a critic of, modern medicine, fantastic therapies that have been developed. I think where we fall short is in helping teach people how to live healthier lives. And then how do we use things like vitamins, nutrients, botanicals? Because by the way, about 40% of the drugs on the market were developed from botanical compounds, so or natural substances. So it's not as though natural compounds don't have value. But we somehow created this disconnect of, hey, I want, if you're inflamed, I'm giving you an anti-inflammatory. Instead of, if you're inflamed, you may need an anti-inflammatory, but what else are you doing that could be contributing to your metabolic inflammation? Maybe the diet that you have, the lack of sleep, stress load, maybe some environmental exposure. There could be any number of things that could do that. And I think the disconnect comes in that, we all get trained a certain way. And, I'm a big believer in the old saying, new ideas don't get accepted, old people die. So I think, another 20 years and we'll be back to honoring natural therapies and back to honoring these different types of approaches as a part of a comprehensive approach to just good medicine for people.
Right. No, and I agree. It's interesting when I see patients and I check their labs, like, okay, what's going on the inside? How do we know? How do we know what's going on with your chemistry? Because I can't help you with your inflammation unless I know, where is their discrepancy. But I feel like from an early age, people and kids especially, like they just don't understand nutrition. They don't understand how the body actually works. There's just little exposure to anatomy, physiology. Like people are like, well, I don't know, my stomach's somewhere in here, my heart's like up here somewhere. I don't, right? The limited knowledge, just from like a lawyer friend, they don't even know. And these are educated people that it's just not part of the regular education in our society. And I feel like that's just made a big disconnect as well. Part of it too, like inflammation coming from fat cells and being obese and overweight, this epidemic in our country is incredible. And these little inflammatory infernos in our fat cells, people don't even realize that's what's happening.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, I think, first of all, we just don't get taught anything about how to take care of ourselves, whether it's in school or outside of school. And I'd have to say, even on the athletic field, where, you've got I've worked with a lot of, pro teams, collegiate teams over the years, individual athletes. Even for folks like that, nutrition would be incredible for extending their career and improving their resiliency. It just hasn't happened to any great degree. Now it's changing, which is fantastic. I think it's starting to change at that level. But I look at the average person and you can't blame them. Think about it. Should I go keto? Should I go carnivore? Should I go vegan? Should I go vegan? Should I go paleo carnivore vegan? I mean, people were inundated with what they should do without really any good firm foundation of, how, what is the right thing for me to do? Like, I can tell you there's a few things everybody do better, right? We could eat more vegetables. That'd be a good one, right? And there's very little pain in that, right? Nobody disagrees if you could eat more vegetables. I'm not saying you got to become a vegan and you got to hug your broccoli, but the problem is when you drive home from work and you're stressed out, all you see on the way home are either bakeries or liquor stores. You don't see any broccoli stands. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that, we don't get reinforcements of why eating healthy or eating good is going to help us in the long run. And I think for the most part, people are just, hey, you know what? Live your life, enjoy what you're going to do, eat that sugar, get those chicken wings, get that piece of cake. And eventually when you get diabetes, we're going to have great drugs for you. And I think that's really unfortunate, especially living in a family that was, riddled with diabetes. My brother was 476 pounds at one point. That's what drove me to get involved in this, was watching what happened with my Italian family, an extended family over all these years.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. Being born into the Italian family, manja, eat, clean your plate. Like, what are you talking about? Now my son says to me, I'm not hungry, Mommy. I don't want to eat that. Okay, well, let me know when you're ready. Because he's self-controlling, because that's natural, and that's what we're supposed to do. Not have your grandmother stuff 16 meatballs down your throat.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And I think it's hard because people don't realize things like stress impact not just, inflammation, because stress, obviously, when you make a lot of cortisol, you trigger a lot of inflammatory cytokines, your blood sugar goes up.
Right.
But people stress eat. They get home from work and they look at that bag of potato chips and they want to hug it. It's like, I love you, Lay's. And then they get to the bottom of the bag and they lick their finger to get the last bit of crumbs and salt out of it. And it's all to cool off that stress response. And that's why I think it's so important that, we really start to emphasize, and I've done this, I mean, gosh, most of my career, all 40 years of doing this work, is encouraging people to make smarter choices on a regular basis and get them to understand why. It's not enough to say, do this. It's enough to give them a great explanation as to why their life's going to get better if they start to make these choices. Because it is about longevity. When you think about it, you go to Sardinia, you got 90-year-olds going up 400 steps carrying their groceries. And here, we think it's fantastic if you get to 75 before you have to use the motorized cart when you go through the grocery store, right? I mean,
No,
and
for sure.
I'm not saying that to be cruel. I think it's tragic.
Absolutely. And there's, again, so many natural ways to do it where you don't need drugs, you don't need pills, you just, need to put the right things in so you get the right things out. I tell people, have we looked at your oil? Have you changed your oil? What kind of gas do you put in your car? You put so much better things in these mechanical things that you own, but you only get one of you. You're not replaceable. And so
Yeah,
that's the challenge.
that's exactly right. I always say, people will spend more time researching the next car they're going to buy or the
Right.
next refrigerator than they do on their own health. They get a report back and they just go, oh yeah, they said all my labs were normal. Well, what does normal mean? Normal could be, and I always make the analogy, if your blood sugar is 98 and 99 is kind of where the limit is, and then 105 is bad. Well, if you're a mile away from the Grand Canyon and you take one step, it's not a big deal. But if you're on the edge of the Grand Canyon and take one step, it's kind of a big deal.
No,
And that's the
absolutely.
way to look at our labs. I mean, they're moving. Our body's just moving through time with its chemistry, and the more that we can hold back metabolic inflammation, which occurs due to all the things you said, Doc. I mean, it's being overweight, making the wrong selections with food, not moving enough, all these kind of things that add up to creating that inflammatory response. And if we don't turn that off, it's metaflammation leads to inflammaging. So if we're talking about longevity, it's not that we have to find magic pills like, Tibetan goji berries. We got to start figuring out, hey, what are the things that I do on a day in and day out basis that's going to turn back that meta-inflammatory process? And I got to tell you, I never thought about aging. I've taken care of myself, since the
Right.
time I was 18. I mean, I'm pretty fit at my age, and I make responsible choices. But I got to tell you, every year I'm more and more interested in making those responsible choices, because as I'm aging, I want to make sure I can still grab the most out of life. And I think
Exactly.
we all need to start thinking that way. And using nutrients is a great way to do that as well.
No, absolutely. So I'm excited because we're going to take a commercial break right now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about nutraceuticals as well as peptides. And these are just little added things that we can get the edge and live a little bit better, live a little bit longer, and kind of supplement after we do make those right choices and do reframe our life, what we can add on. So in a few minutes, we'll be back with Jim LaValle. Again, I'm Dr. Suzanne Manzi, and this is Pain Diaries.